Advisory Council today. We're going to do this on Teams. And there's Chris. So I think that's this is good. Good morning, Chris. We're just getting started here. Please mute yourself until it's time for you to speak. We're going to do this the way we typically do, which is for questions after presentations and whatnot. We'll take questions from council and advisors first, and then after that, the public. The other thing I wanted to put out there to the group, down a staff member that normally helps take notes today. So I'd like to use the Teams function, which does a transcription. So if no one objects, I would like to transcribe it today to help with some of the note taking. So I'll just pause for a second. If anybody has an objection, please voice it now. Okay, with that, I'm gonna turn that on. You'll probably see a confirmation of that on your screen, and I'll turn it over to Steve for the welcome.
Welcome, everybody. I know it's been a little bit since August was our last meeting, and actually I wasn't at that one, but hopefully everyone's doing well. And with that, I don't have any other announcements. Is there anybody that we need to introduce?
No, I don't think so. I could do a quick roll call.
Yeah, I would go ahead and do our roll call, make sure who's here from the council.
Sounds good. So I'll start with Chris Andreessen.
Present.
Great. Hi, Chris. Steve Blankenship.
Present.
Is Jen Coffey on? I know she's another engagement this morning, plans to come, but she was going to be a little late. Okay, we'll look for her later. Darren Stanker.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Kareem Adim. Is Kareem on? Okay, I know he planned to join, so I'll look for him as the meeting goes on as well. Dr. Taha Marhaba. Taha? Okay. Don Shields.
Here.
Hi, Don.
Hey.
Norm Nelson.
I'm here. Good morning.
I see you. Good morning. Dave Specca. I see you, Dave. You're not on. You're on mute, but I see you. You're here. And Jay Long. I think I saw Jay was on.
I'm here. Good morning, everyone.
All right. Good morning. Great.
Good morning.
All right.
All right.
I think we're good to go for the next item.
All right. Do you have anything for membership updates, Ken?
You know, I don't this month. I think it's probably something that we as a council are going to have to dig into over the next few months now that the plan's out, but I don't have any updates today.
Okay. So minutes, you provided us with minutes from May 17th. If everybody's had a chance to look at that, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes from May 17th.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Don't be
Second.
shy. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstain? Okay. The second set of minutes was from August 16th. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second. Second. All those in favor?
Second.
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Abstain. I abstain. I wasn't at that meeting, so. Okay. Next up is a topic dear to our hearts: the current water supply conditions.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen. As many of you, probably most of you know, NJDEP declared a drought watch yesterday. So I'll go through our normal hydro report, and I supplemented it with a couple other items to sort of tell the story as well. I think it would be good for all the council members to sort of sound off as well today to explain how their various areas that they represent are doing at this point. So just to start, is this visible for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So here you see reservoir percentages from last week and currently. Many of them are um, below long-term average. There's a few that are still above long-term average. Collectively, the combined Northeast, though, is below long-term average, as is the Water Supply Authority's Raritan system, North Jersey districts, and then Manasquan is actually below drought watch. Many of you probably saw the articles that came out earlier this week that the Manasquan system's at record low levels right now.
Mm.
That's in our coastal north drought region. So that's the reservoir picture. Those of you that are on our interested parties list for drinking water supply indicators got this yesterday. This is where our drought indicators are at presently. You can see this is the first week where we've declared a drought watch. That happened yesterday. Generally, what we're seeing, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so all of them are visible. Precipitation levels have been dropping steadily since those August storms that we saw. I'll go through a little bit more of that in detail. Stream flows are low, particularly down south. And then you're seeing some lower reservoir levels in both the central and coastal north areas and low groundwater levels pretty much across the board. So this is a large reason why we decided to declare drought watch at this time. The backstory on some of this precipitation is that I'll show a couple graphics here. First of all, I'm just going to start by talking about temperature. You know, we know higher temperatures have been occurring really all year long. If you look back to even December and January, we've had above average temperatures every month. This was our third warmest summer, which consisted of the third warmest June and the seventh warmest July. That's dating back to 1895 when the records began happening. But we've also experienced some above average, slightly, but above average temperatures in August and September. So it's been warmer. And then that's sort of combined with lower than average monthly precipitation for 4 out of the last 5 months. So we had relatively low precipitation levels in May, June, and July, below average. We had those nice storms in August, which really gave us some relief. But September was the third driest September on record. And we've had negligible rain in October. So just to dig into that a little bit further, and these graphics are coming from the state climatologist, Dave Robinson agreed to share them with us for today to sort of illustrate some of this stuff. We're grateful for that. This is another one he provided. You see here the September precipitation levels on your left-hand side there. These are, we were about 3 inches down in September from normal. So the southern portion of the state here received about a ½ inch to maybe an inch in some areas, and the northern part was about an inch to an inch and a half, all resulting in about 3 inches less than normal. And then what you're looking at on the right-hand side is October. Pretty much to date, there's been no rain. There's been a smattering of showers in some spots, but effectively no rain. So that's a relatively dry 6-week period. And there's currently no rain in the forecast. More on that coming up. Just another illustration of what I've been talking about, except this time on the left-hand side of your screen, you're seeing the 30-day, very dry, obviously. 90-day, a little less dry looking because you still have some of those big storms that occurred in the first 2 weeks of August in there. When they start dropping out of that 90-day period, which will occur over the next 3 weeks or so, that's going to look quite a bit drier. Stream flows really track what we see in the indicators and some of those other graphics, pretty much very low across the state, especially in the southern regions. And this is the US Drought Monitor, which came out yesterday. So this is an up-to-date version. They moved the state. I'm going to try to zoom in on the state here because I'm sure that's tough for you to see. So New Jersey's right here. They moved particularly some of the southern region of New Jersey further into D1, and this Pinelands portion they put into their D2 category. Now remember, they're not looking at it strictly from a water supply standpoint. They're looking more holistically at all the different definitions of drought, but that's where they're at currently. And this is the kicker. The 7-day forecast has, zero rain in it, unfortunately. There's some pressure systems that have been sitting off the coast that have really been resulting in sort of drier conditions and easterly winds and whatnot, and that seems to be holding, unfortunately. 8 to 14 day, put a little less stock in, but again, it's calling for below average rain for most of the state, as well as higher temperatures. The DRBC reservoirs are actually in good shape for this time of year, per their reservoir curves. The New York City shutdown is occurring, so there are releases going on as they draw down those reservoirs a little bit further. The salt line, this is where it would normally be. You'll recall that the Reedy Island gauge got taken out during some of those big storms a few months ago. Glad to report that there is a new gauge online. It's near the Coast Guard station that's down there. It's being calibrated currently, so it's not necessarily being published at this point. Currently, the salt line has been calculated to be around Chester, which is kind of close to around approximately River Mile 82, which is the Commodore Barry Bridge area. That's a real approximation right now. So it's a little higher than normal, but we've heard from DRBC that they're not concerned for it at this point. And good news is that new gauge is going to be getting calibrated and back online. So that's timely. So that's the overview. Does anyone want to chime in on any of the slides before I stop sharing? Any council members? Okay. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and just open up for council members for any reactions. I'm hoping to hear from today. I'm hoping, Dave, you could chime in from the ag perspective just to know where things are headed. I know demands are probably tapering off and whatnot. Jay, golf, and Darren, landscaping a little bit. I'm just curious, if possible.
Well, I'll be happy to start off from the agriculture perspective. Things are really dry. It's dusty out there. And for certain crops like the corn and soybeans that are being harvested right now, that's not a big deal. They actually will end up saving a little bit of money for the drying cost of their grain. But interestingly, the moisture rates are well below what they normally would see. Like with soybeans, I was talking to a guy, moisture percent is 9%, and they like to have it up around 13. When it gets a little bit low, it gets more brittle. So from the grain growers' perspective, we're okay. Those who produce hay suffered a little bit this fall with less production. They normally, as it cools off, the hay grows a little bit, but not this year. And for us vegetable farmers, not having a lot of rain is okay as long as you have irrigation water to be able to put on the crop, because disease pressure drops off a little bit when it's drier. But it has been a challenge to keep things watered, especially the last couple of days have been kind of windy and dusty. So it's a real challenge. Probably one of the groups that are affected the most right now are the cranberry growers. They rely on flooding the bogs to harvest the berries. And their reservoirs are really low that they normally would drain from into the bogs. So they're having to pump water out of the ground to flood the bogs and do the harvest. So they're pretty concerned at this point in time. And a lot of them have never seen this kind of situation before.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that perspective. That's interesting with the cranberry growers. I hadn't thought about that, them having to pump groundwater for that purpose.
Right.
Darren, if you're on, could you speak to the landscaping perspective a little bit? I know it's kind of like a time for reseeding and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. How's everybody doing? Yeah, I mean, most of what we see, where it's echoing kind of what David said. I mean, from an irrigation standpoint, yeah, like as long as people can irrigate, which I haven't heard too many problems with yet, that's still okay. I mean, from the nursery side, it's getting cooler, so we're a little happy because things are starting to, go a little dormant. So we get to cut everything back for the winter. So we're doing okay in that respect, but no real issues yet in terms of supply issues. It's a good time of year. If it was middle of summer, I think we'd be hurting. So
Oh yeah, that'd be a different story.
yep,
For sure.
very much.
Great. Thanks, Darren. And then Jay, golf course irrigation winding down?
Sure. Much like Darren mentioned, it is, towards the end of the season here, the requirements for the turf grass, applied irrigation, it's a lot less this time of year. So we're in pretty good shape after fairly normal summer and a lot of rainfall in August, where everybody is going to be okay with their water allocation amounts. Most golf courses do have some pretty good storage capabilities and different water sources where we're able to manage that. But we do like to manage the water, especially in the fall, to give it, as little water as we possibly can, with providing good conditions so the grass is able to develop good roots and get itself through the winter. Few superintendents and golf courses across the state might be holding off on some large-scale seeding and sodding projects just because of the availability of the water. But we're hoping that this, turns around pretty quick and, the rains come back. So golf courses are okay for the moment.
Okay. Thanks much, Jay. All right. How about some of our council members that are in the water supplier space, like Steve? I know you're down south. Chris, you're up north.
We haven't seen too much increase in demand that way, but the area itself is really dry, and a lot of the ponds that I drive by are dropping pretty drastically. So in this area, it really is dry. We really haven't had precipitation as noted on your slides earlier. So
Yeah. Chris, you want to chime in from Middlesex perspective?
Sure. I saw Don took his mute off. We're okay with supply. We're seeing demands up a bit, but nothing that we're too concerned with at this point, but keeping an eye on things.
Yeah, Chris, that we're in the same boat. Yeah, demands are still up a little bit from typically we'd start to see them drop off a bit, but they've stayed a little bit elevated. Certainly not summer peaks by any stretch, but I think we're in good shape for now.
All right. Thanks very much, guys. I don't know if any of our advisors want to chime in. I think Ken Klipstein is on. Not sure if anyone from North Jersey District is on.
Yeah, I have to say, we're very happy that the work got done around Valley, and as you mentioned, we're at 95% in Round Valley, which is really saving us at this point. But so combined 85%. But with stream flows as low, the way our system works, we're still releasing 125 mgd a day. So a lot of pressure on the reservoir, and we are also watching these long-term forecasts and are quite concerned.
Yeah, the long-term forecasts are not looking good.
Yeah, and Manasquan's, that's it's quite worrisome the way that sets up and how much usable water there is in Manasquan as we draw down. We have issues down there, and so at 58% capacity, that Manasquan's probably more worrisome.
Thanks, Ken.
and can't take out of the river really.
Right, because the flows are too low.
Right.
Any other council members? Any
Ken,
comments?
I know for the long range, I was reading we're supposed to enter into a La Nina, which I think that usually means we're a little bit warmer and drier for the winter.
It can. So we were speaking with Dave Robinson about that earlier this week, and New Jersey's kind of on the line where sometimes we experience it and sometimes we don't. I think you're right in your assessment. It usually means a little warmer and drier, but that would occur, more into the winter is what Dave was saying. So it's not really necessarily what we're experiencing now. So it would happen,
Yeah, I was just
a
saying the
couple months from
concern
now.
might be if we don't pick up some precipitation within the next few months and we go into a drier winter, as mentioned, coming into the spring, that could be very interesting.
Yeah, winter drought is not great. I agree. Yeah, that's a drier winter is not something we're hoping for at all. We'd like to see the rains start kicking off again.
Because as Dave said, with the soil moisture being down already, I don't see that if we don't get something, that's going to continue through the winter, and that's going to be really rough in the spring. So
Absolutely. And with US Drought Monitor, that's what you're seeing with some of their, that D2 that they're calling for, they put out in that Pinelands area, because they're taking into account, soil moistures and things like that being very low. So that's reflected in those graphics that you're seeing. Yep.
has anybody gone back to look at, I know in very early 2000, we had a very dry period there for a year or so. I'm just wondering how we're comparing to something like that, because I know at some points I was developing some wells and we weren't allowed to do the pump tests and things like that. So
Yeah, we're looking back at all that data in our through our drought group that's meeting regularly. I should mention that our DEP drought group is going to be meeting weekly now that we're in drought watch, and we're looking at that stuff pretty heavily. I was looking earlier this week at when we declared drought watch in 2002, how things looked, and that was a period where the groundwater levels were pretty low, and obviously soil moistures were low as well. Doesn't really compare to exactly. Every time we compare drought watch, it's a little different in terms of where the indicators are at. But yeah, looking at all that data.
okay.
Any other comments from council members? Okay, Bob's been waiting patiently with his hand up. Hi, Bob.
Hello, good morning, all. Could you turn back to that summary chart of 90-day flows, groundwater levels, and reservoirs?
Right at the beginning, Bob?
Yes.
Okay, everybody look away for a second. I'm gonna go fast. This one?
No, the one that has the numbers and how many weeks. There we go.
This one, the indicators. Gotcha.
Now, when we look at 90-day stream flow, and we're seeing some of the regions are, for weeks have been below the 90-day average, especially in the southern part of the state.
Right.
Now, we're using the low flow margin as a planning threshold for groundwater withdrawals. So I'm relatively sure that within these regions, there are some Huck 12s that you're using now that are well below the low flow margin. And many of them could be as a result of public or agricultural withdrawals, groundwater unconfined aquifer withdrawals. And I know it's been my experience that we emphasize the reservoir levels, on our drought declarations. And I'm wondering, is there some approach that we could take that looks at, I know you don't have stream gauges on every Huck 12, but is there some way that we could take a little bit more of a detailed approach that within these large regions, whether or not many of the streams are, below the low flow margin and possibly resulting in ecological impacts because of the withdrawals. I'm just throwing it out as a idea of something that DEP could think of, or people on the council could think of, that could give us a better awareness of where withdrawals are really affecting stream flow in individual Huck 12s.
Yeah, thanks for that idea, Bob. I do think that, coming out of the water supply plan, one of the things that I think comes up quite a bit in terms of direction for DEP moving forward is to look at some of those areas that the low flow margin calculations flagged as being stressed and sort of verifying the impacts of withdrawals. So I think there is a plan to do that work that you're describing. I'm not sure that it would necessarily drive the way we do these indicators at this point, but certainly down the road as we do more of that planning based work and verification, I think it will.
Yeah, I'm looking around my area, and we have another 2 or 3 weeks of relatively warm weather, and even last week when it was cooler, there was a lot of irrigation going on, lawn irrigation, and they're not helping stream flow. So might be moved up a notch to drought warning or something, and get a little bit more public understanding of this. And just thinking out loud that we're by these larger regions we're missing a lot.
Yeah.
So,
well, like I said, we're going to be meeting internally every week. There's no thoughts of moving to warning at this time. Just went to watch, but we are going to be watching demands and whatnot. It's good to hear from Steve and Don and Chris. They haven't seen abnormal spikes in demand, and we'll see how it plays out the next few weeks.
okay.
So, thanks very much, Bob.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
All right.
Steve, and thanks, Bob. I jumped in right at the end of
Oh,
that,
hi,
but I am
Jen.
here. What's
to
going
see
on
you.
with my lighting, but I'm
Jennifer.
here. I mean, we're really
Okay.
at the point, sorry if we've already gone over this, but really at the point where there's little the public can do in terms of conserving water. I mean, people aren't watering their lawns at least as much now. It's getting chilly. There's not a lot of pool water going on. So we're just kind of crossing our fingers and waiting for some rain, right?
Yeah, winter's a tough time in that respect.
Thank you.
All right, Kent, do we want to move on to legislation and regulation updates?
Yeah, sounds good, Steve. I believe Brandon Carino's on, and he's going to lead that. I did send these to council members, so you have them. But Brandon's going to walk you through them.
So morning, everyone. It's probably like 3 main items of interest. Again, primarily for the water utilities this time around. So since our August meeting, the governor did approve the Legionella bill into law. S2188 was kind of under the Senate bill. So that one became the final version. So I won't go real into the weeds there, but it sets some standards for disinfection residuals, requirements for the department to take some steps, water purveyors to take some steps, Department of Health to take some steps, kind of for the purposes of reducing potential risk of Legionella in distribution systems. So we still We'll be communicating with water utilities in the coming weeks, kind of on what the specifics are, what they might need to do, what we plan on doing. So more to come on that. Two other items that are pretty similar but are technically distinct. One would be this A1400, which would require water systems which have like a water quality issue to notify any school in the same municipality of that issue. Likewise, A516, it would make some other modifications to like tier 1 notices or boil water advisories, as the term is used in the legislation. Put in a little extra outreach from public water systems to get the appropriate contact information for residents in the case of an emergency where they would have to issue some sort of notification, kind of in that short-term range, like preferred phone number to use, that sort of thing. So those two bills did pass the Assembly and are now with the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee. Hence why both of those are in yellow. So I can dig up the links and throw them in the chat for anyone that's interested. But those two have a little bit of motion happening.
Brendan, have you heard anything on the Greenstein? That's the A1400 S984. Basically, when I'm reading that basically says any violation. So that's primary and secondary standards. Is there a reason anybody saying anything? Anybody been reaching out to DEP to find out what's driving this?
Oftentimes the legislature does reach out to us for input, but whether or not they take our input is kind of their discretion. I'll note that as written, the law also says any municipality within any school within the same municipality, but doesn't necessarily specify that the school is a customer. So there's some interesting quirks with that one. Again, just flagging it for the council and, as a potential item of interest, but couldn't really
I know as a
weigh in
utility,
beyond that.
this is kind of an interesting thing because, obviously primary standards, you have tier 1 notifications. And, this is basically looking like it's anything. And like you mentioned, in some cases, schools aren't even registered, so we don't even know who the schools are. And then when it says immediately, it's not really defined either. So I don't know, as a utility, I have, some reservations about this. I'm not sure why we're blasting out things for a secondary, which would be an aesthetic kind of issue. So I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in, but that's just
I think Steve, you said it. You said it right. Share the same concerns. There's a lot of notification we have to do already for issues. This seems to be a bit of a reach. So we'll continue to follow up with the legislators here and see what we can do.
Otherwise, I didn't notice anything else for any other sectors come through. So I'll move on to the regulatory items. Okay. So that should pop